thank you all for joining today. We are on the STS Congenital Heart Surgery Database version 6.23 upgrade, and we are continuing with our anesthesia section today. So, but yes, again, if everyone is not aware, this is Hank Crone, our newest STS National Database member. He is Carol's very good boy. He had to get dressed up for his first vet visit last week. So welcome, Hank, to the team. He is awesome. Real quick, just agenda again, real quick introductions. On the call with me today, let's see, who do we have from the STS side? We have a small group today. It's just myself, Carol, Chastity, Janet, and Melinda, and I believe Leslie may be joining us as well. So again, just a super small group today for the upgrade webinar. Again, if you have any questions, please be sure to put those into the Q&A and not the chat, so that way we can keep track of them. We'd appreciate it. Again, I'll have just a super quick STS update. Then I'll turn things over to Chastity to continue with our 6.23 upgrade on anesthesia, and then we'll finish up with questions. So let's go ahead and get started. Again, here's just a review of the timeline for CHSD. Again, today we are covering completing the anesthesia section, and then we will wrap up with Q&A. I don't think it will take us all the call today to cover the anesthesia. We don't have that much left. But again, we'll take your Q&A. If you have questions from previous sections, please feel free to throw those into the Q&A. We'll address questions. We'll cover what we can today. And then we can have, we may set up an additional webinars, as we had talked about in the past, perhaps doing a case scenario for the aorta section. So we'll have continuing education for these upgrade webinars coming once we complete this anesthesia section. So just know that we will continue to have some education for these upgrade webinars. Also, I just wanted to provide a brief update from STS. I know on the last upgrade webinar, we had started to get into some questions regarding Appendix C and the combo codes, and there was some confusion about that. I just wanted to let you know that on the next upgrade webinar, or next month, not next upgrade webinar, I apologize, our next monthly webinar, we'll be providing additional clarifications, addressing a bunch of those questions that you all had. So mark your calendar. So on the monthly webinar, we will be providing some additional education on the new Appendix C, how those combo codes will be handled in analysis, and again, just clear up any outstanding confusion that you all had from that previous, from our last call where we started to get into that topic. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Chastity, and we will continue on with the anesthesia portion. Actually, I don't think we need this one. So let's go ahead and get started here. And I think Chastity, you said we finished with the anesthesia blood and blood related products. So the floor is yours.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm still singing Hootie, so I'll wake up and come back to reality.
I know, okay, I had to remember not to sing for you guys.
It is college for me. This is good. So we're going to start with the anesthesia blood and blood related products. So as you know, largely the blood products moved out of the general section and into the anesthesia section. So you will not be collecting these related fields unless you are a part of the anesthesia database data collection. So there are questions up and under the operative section that ask if blood products were given to the patient. If you then answered yes to transfusion of non-autologous blood products initiated before leaving the OR, then if you are an anesthesia participant, you would come over and answer these. So it's a little bit different than how we've been previously doing this. So while these are not necessarily new fields, as you see, they have the blue background, meaning that they're new fields. It's because they became multi-select fields and that it moved out of the general section and into the anesthesia section. So this isn't a huge shift for those of you who do anesthesia, but just so you know why it looks different. So if transfusion of non-autologous blood products was initiated before leaving the OR, if you answered that yes up above, you now as an anesthesia participant can come in and answer in Mills in milliliters, the amount of each of the types of products that were given within the OR. Then the next question is, were there any, if you answered yes to there being blood products given within 24 hours of the procedure, so post-procedure for 24 hours, then you would come in to this. If you answered that as yes, you come into this section as an anesthesia participant and fill out that. So the good news is the large change in blood where you're answering just some yes or no questions to products given under the operative section. And then if you are an anesthesia participant, you would come here and you're only answering now for these 2 time periods. So for what was given in the OR and what was given in the first 24 hours post-procedure. So no longer are we doing the entire, episode of care, length of stay, that has been eliminated. So I think this is a welcomed change and make people happy. And I don't know how much time you all spend on collecting blood products, but I know at my center, we spend an enormous amount of time doing this for the patients that have long length of stays or require a lot of products. So this will really hone up that time period. So then the next question is, if you answered, again, back up in the operative section, if you answered that the patient did receive epsilon amino caproic acid or Amicar, then in this section only as an anesthesia participant, you would then answer the usual questions that we had before. So the load, the pump prime, was it dosed as a milligram per milliliter of pump prime, and then the infusion rate, if any. And then the next question again goes through if you answered yes to tranexamic acid, or you then come in here and answer the same questions. And so the load, the pump prime, the rate, and the dosing. Then if you had answered yes in the operative section to procoagulants, they're all listed here with the same questions. So what was dose 1, dose 2, and dose 3 of each of these types of procoagulants? So again, not new, it's just they moved from the general operative section into the anesthesia section. So you're answering the yes, no's up in the operative section. And then if you're an anesthesia participant, this is where you get into the detail about each of these doses. So that is the big change here. They're all things that we're used to already filling out. So Leanne, you can go ahead and scroll down to, I think, page 85 it is. And then we get into the point of care coagulation testing. Again, not a new field. We've been completing this already, but it became a multi-select instead of all of the individual yes, no's to each of these. And so the same options are listed here for what type of point of care coagulation testing that you did in the OR only. And then where AT3 was an AT3 level measured preoperatively is unchanged. Was transfusion or bleeding algorithm utilized for post-protamine bleeding? And then were any of the following labs checked during CPB, yes or no? And so instead of, again, answering each one as yes or no, you're just doing a multi-select and selecting the types of labs that were checked during CPB, and then it asks for the value of fibrinogen and platelets if you selected those. Then were any of the following labs checked in the operating room after CPB completed? Again, yes or no. And we're again asked to enter the value for fibrinogen and the platelet count if indeed you checked those two as being completed after CPB, but in the OR. So that completes the anesthesia section. And then we go into some site-specific fields. These are new and I think are going to be, well, I'm incredibly excited for them, so I'm hoping that you are as well, but they're called site-specific fields. So STS has given us some fields. These will be built into your software because they are a part of the specs that went to the vendors. So everybody will have these. You can use these for anything that you desire. So you have two free text fields. So you see free text field number 1 and free text field number 2. They're for your site use only. They don't get submitted or viewed by STS or the data warehouse or anything. But so free text fields, you can write your heart away and whatever it is that you want to use that free text field for. Then you get a date field as well, and then a yes, no field. So I think what's really nice about these is that it gives you something within your database that hopefully you can work within your software and query it and get it out of your database for reporting. So one idea I have for this section would be to free text the things where perhaps I found something in the EHR in a very unusual spot, and to ever go back and try to find that 500 cases later and know what that was on. That would be a great place to put in the free text field. Another idea I thought about is, we know that when we do our 30-day follow-ups on whether a patient is alive or not, when it's not in your EHR, and say you had to call a parent or maybe call an outside provider like a cardiologist or someone who's not involved in your hospital system, therefore their records aren't in your system, or even maybe a pediatrician where you're trying to hunt down the kids and find out their status. I currently track those outside of the database. This will be a great place to come in and say, talk to mom on, May 10th, and said patient was doing well, whatever. And then you have a date field, and you have 2 free text fields that you could use for something like that. My suggestion, just as a data manager, would be to locally use these fields consistently. And so that you always know that the date field is the date to follow up, if that's what you're gonna make that field be, or something that you do specifically within your program that you would like to track. So I think that these are super excited. Then you get into STS temporary fields. These are only used as directed by STS. So do not use these. Do not put data in these. If you were to use these without STS saying that you should use these fields, your harvest file should get kicked. And if it's not getting kicked yet, it will get kicked. So you don't want to use these. It was great that we had these, because when something unexpected like COVID happened, STS was able to say, use this field for the date of testing and use this temporary field to say when the patient was positive, enter 10, 11, 12, whatever. And so it was really nice that we had these fields built in, because we were able to quickly flip and start collecting something that was going to be important to our patients and our analysis. So again, do not use these fields unless there's another global pandemic and STS has to tell us how to use these fields. So leave those blank. They're just there should we need them. And that is the end of the data collection form. So I think we're going to open it up now, unless anyone else has any updates, open it up for questions with you all.
Hey, Chastity, it's Carol. Thank you. You did a wonderful job, as always.
Thank you.
I just want to, you had said, just to be clear, or just to further clarify, on the site-specific fields, those are not submitted with your vendor software to STS. So if you are going to track your patients for follow-up, like Chastity had mentioned, and if your site happens to be audited, you need to make sure that you include this in your audited file to the audit company. So we'll make sure to include instructions when this version goes live and the audit begins on this version, which won't be for quite a while yet that we would ever audit this version. But when we do audit it, we'll provide instructions to make sure you include the site-specific information should you be using those to track your patients for a 30-day post-discharge follow-up.
Great, Carol. Thank you. That's a great reminder.
Chastity, you did so good. There's no questions.
There's no questions yet. Well, that's because
you got somebody with their hand up.
Oh, yay. Okay, good.
Oh, are we going to let Owen talk? I don't know.
I don't know. Only if he sings. He has to sing first. His spin doctors.
Okay. Singing's required.
That's how it goes.
Go ahead, Owen. Start with the song.
All right. Yeah, right. I don't want to scare everybody off the call. So in terms of, Chastity, you made a statement saying if you put a value in the temp yes, no fields, that your file will get rejected. Is that a new feature that the STS is implementing? Because when I normally do my trainings, I'll tell people, for instance, if you're going to use temp YN for your own purpose, which you should not do, but let's just say you wanted to track COVID, just as an example. And so you put yeses and nos, but then the STS says, oh, we want to track patients who have HIV. And now you've just answered yes and no for that question, right? Because you're sending data which you intended for your own purpose. But now you're answering the HIV question, which is incorrectly coded. So will the STS reject your file now if you have values there?
I would think if the STS said to use a field, whatever you have in that field will end up going to them. So in your example, if I were tracking somebody's COVID status, but STS came and said, on my own, completely,
Yeah, right.
not by direction, but then STS said, now temporary field 6370 is going to be HIV status for a patient, answer yes or no. Unfortunately, then when your file goes in, it's going to think all your patients do or don't have HIV rather than COVID.
Correct.
But if there, I believe we had an example this year when we went live with IQVIA where somebody did use the temp fields before COVID,
Right.
before we were instructed for COVID, and that their file wasn't accepted, or perhaps they got a bunch of errors. So maybe I am mistaken on the file not being accepted, but there may have been a bunch of errors or warnings or something. And I can't recall who that person was, but.
Yeah, so I just want to make it clear to everybody who participates that you are potentially corrupting the data by filling in these temp fields when they're not active by the STS. So in my experience, they do not reject your file. They'll take it and they'll process that data as if you answered the question.
Right.
So I just wanted to clarify that when you made that statement. That's all.
No, perfect. Thank you.
All right. Our next question, thanks, Owen. Still think you should sing, but whatever. Next question. We were told last week that the data specs, the data collection resources have been locked behind a login. Can you please remind me how to make an account? Are there any special instructions for vendors? So the data, I am actually logged in right now. So sorry. So I'm logged in right now. But let's see here. Yes, the data collection resources are now login required. So ideally, when you come into this page, if you click here, you'll be taken to a login page. So, and there is a button off to the right that says create a user account. So if you can just click there, and member services can assist you with that. They can help you get a access for those purposes. Chastity, this one's a question for you. Should only point of care tests be used, or can tests sent to the lab during the operation be used?
Well, Maggie, that is a really, really great question. So I didn't know the answer. So I went to the training manual, and it doesn't have any information about that either. And so could I have you, I mean, it clearly says point of care coagulation testing. So it makes me think that they really don't want lab values. But I think in fairness, we should clarify that with the anesthesia folk. Maggie, would you please submit that as an FAQ to the core group? And that'll be my reminder to get it over to Dr. Wiener with anesthesia to answer that question, to see if it's acceptable to use something from the lab versus actual point of care testing. Thank you, Maggie.
Thank you, Maggie. Are we still collecting COVID information in the temp field in 341? Yes,
I believe COVID has a different field in the form that we covered earlier. It is under, it's on page 6.
I don't want to angry scroll, sorry.
Sorry, on page 6 under hospitalization. So you're filling out hospital name, zip code, although that's probably in your software, the type of insurance the patient has, and then it goes right into, did the patient have laboratory confirmed diagnosis of COVID, and the date of that testing closest to the OR. So those are still, it says they're in temp code field 560 and 565. So that'll be separate from those 3 that are at the bottom. Those have different numbers. So yes, they're still in temp fields, but they're actually located within the data collection form and not just on a random last minute thought of the database.
Right, but yes, correct. And I just want to clarify. So, but right now for version 341, until 6.23 goes live, you should still be collecting COVID in those temp fields as indicated in 341. So no change there. No, you're fine.
No, I was thinking moving forward, but yes, still do 341 remains the same. Yep. Do everything the same for 341.
Yep, no worries. All right, any other questions regarding the data collection form? Anything that you have on any other sections that we've previously covered? Again, like I stated, we'll continue education as we had talked about, having some case scenarios. If you have ideas that you would like to share, if there's certain sections or anything that you'd like to see a particular case scenario for, please let us know. You can throw that into the Q&A and let us know that. Again, we had talked about the aorta section, and I think Melinda has a speaker in mind for that specifically. But again, if you have ideas, things that you would like to see case scenarios for, that would be you can email me directly or Chastity. We'd love to get those ideas from you. Is there a minimum amount of data that must be submitted in the anesthesia section to be included in analysis? No,
As far as I'm aware, at this point in time, that answer is no. That's not to say that at any point in time the decision couldn't be made to put some parameters around that. But for right now, there is no minimum amount of data.
Great. Let's see here. Anything else? And super early today. I know this has been Chastity and Melinda and Carol have done a phenomenal job, excuse me, walking through this data collection form, and we realize that it is a huge amount of information that's been thrown at you guys. Again, I'm fully, expect you all to take some time to digest everything, to look it over, to gather your thoughts. Again, we do have, even though today, we've fully covered the data collection form, we do have some additional time slated for Q&A. So we'll be sending out more information on the next webinar, but I do encourage you to go back, take a look at everything, look at the data collection form, gather your questions. If you'd like to send those in to me or to Chastity prior to the next our next call, that would be phenomenal. That way we could prep for our next call and have some topics and have answers and questions for you. Let's see here. Your site needs to be participating in the anesthesia module to enter data, though, correct? So you need to be participating in order to submit that data for analysis. But I think you must be able to collect that. If you want to collect it internally on your own, you can still collect that data in your own software, right, Chastity?
I think it depends on who your vendor is and if the vendor has the module open to you for local use versus not. So
right, okay,
that's a question for probably your vendor, but anything that you want to do locally, you usually can do, or between you and your vendor, but it will not be accepted for analysis, correct?
Yep. Owen? Yeah.
Yeah,
Speaking
so
of vendors.
I mean, specifically for us, we leave it open and we tell users that you can collect the data of the STS and it will go to the STS. They're just going to ignore it because you don't have a contract.
Right.
And also if at some point in the future you do sign a contract, the STS or IQVIA will report that you're missing the 4 years of data, not just the contract signing date. So if, sometimes it's in their best interest to start collecting it now, keep it in there, and then once they sign it, then they already have it. They don't have to go back, or it's just sometimes the reports are overwhelming when you go back that far.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Awesome. Thank you, Owen. Crystal, these webinars have been super helpful. Thank you. Chastity, Melinda, again, and Carol have done an amazing job and have put a lot of time and effort into this. So they have done an amazing job. So thank you for your feedback. We appreciate it. All right. I'm still there's not much more coming in. So definitely want to be respectful of everyone's time.
I'm wondering if Chastity might want to go through the process where we're going to be starting working on the training manual. Just give the people on the call an idea of kind of what the process is going to be and how important it is if you guys have questions now or things that you think will be problematic as we're going through the training manual. It's helpful to hear your feedback so that we can think about those things before the training manual gets out. So that's another reason why it's important to look at the form and see if you have thoughts about specific questions that you may have about the fields.
Absolutely. Thank you, Melinda, for that prompt. I think this is a great thing. So I put together a plan for updating the new training manual, and we are utilizing Melinda and Melinda's brain quite heavily, but we broke up the training manual. Really, I went through the data collection form and said, okay, broke it into 15 sections. And I'm incorporating, then I'm going through like where in our current training manual from 3.41, where data managers submitted clarification questions, and perhaps where we provided some, from the current definition, provided some maybe different detail, or said we would address something in a future upgrade, things like that. So I'm incorporating, some of the questions that were asked into then the new intent and clarification, so that those will be incorporated into the training manual from the get-go, and you won't need to refer back to version 3.41 because that information won't be valid in the new version. So I'm sending out each section, giving then the core group members who volunteered to be a part of this project, which is really the entire core group. So I sent out the first section to them yesterday, and then I give them time for their comments and feedback or anything perhaps that I have missed. Melinda is also, I should say, she's working ahead of me and going through the things that require some adult finesse, and especially all those adult fields that we're not familiar with. So she's providing that up front before I then in turn send it to the core group for review. And so then the core group is going through and pointing out, this doesn't read well, we also need to add this. I get a lot of questions about that. And so then that we can make it as robust for you all as data managers as possible. From there, it will go to STS leadership and to Dr. Subramanian to review, to make sure that they feel we've addressed, the definitions appropriately. And so we broke it into these kind of, I would say, digestible sections, because to do it all in one outset would be very painful. But I think that way we'll get the detail and, what we need. We have a due date of AQO. So I want this to be in a good, postable, usable place by AQO, so that we can discuss what it looks like at AQO, how you're going to use it at that meeting. I'm going to volunteer to hopefully do some type of presentation on the new training manual and what will happen with Go Live. And so that's our due date. It's not to say that there won't be changes made after AQO, but I want it to be near completion, where we're just putting the icing on top by the time we get to AQO. So that's our goal. We're working really hard to get that done, and we're on schedule as of day 2 in this process. So we'll keep it going. So again, like Melinda said, if you're looking at this new data collection form in 6.23 and there's something that just doesn't make sense to you, then go ahead and send me an email so I make sure that we're addressing that. I think some of these adult fields are completely unfamiliar to us. And so if there's something specific that we want, to clarify ahead of time, let's do that. So please, please, please make sure you've gone through this data collection form and that everything is being addressed. Obviously, I know you don't know all the definitions yet, but just when you look at the question, if the question itself seems squirrely, or when Melinda and Carol did their review of some of those adult fields, that maybe some questions popped up in your head. And so please, please, send those along to us so we make sure we incorporate them. If you have the question, everyone else has the question as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Chastity. And Chris had asked if sharing a draft at some point would be helpful for receiving that feedback before finalizing.
We'll keep that thought open, Krista. I think that's really hard. I think we need to get it, kind of in a place by AQO and work on that.
Yes, thank you, Chastity. Okay, let's see here. When is AQO? AQO is, I should know these dates off the top of my head.
28, 29.
Yeah. Out of the STS website, there is a link for AQO. Let's see here. Advances in quality outcomes, and that's 2021. Let's see here. And no, Emily. So yes, so let me just pull it. It might be helpful if you can actually see what I'm looking at. So From the STS website, I went to meetings and calendar of events. So here you can see the calendar of events has everything listed. So 2022 AQO is October 26th through the 28th in Providence, Rhode Island. And if you click the link there, you can, more information is coming soon. We're working very hard on AQO right now. Emily and her team, we're in the midst of AQO planning. So again, more details will be coming soon, but it is scheduled for the 26th through the 28th of October. So Rhode Island in the fall should be absolutely beautiful. And Diane says, happy Nurses Week and happy Perfusionist Week to all those out there in the STS database world. I agree. Thank you very much for all that you do. You guys are absolutely amazing, and we appreciate you greatly. Do you know if AQO will be in person or virtual yet? So AQO will be both. We're going to have a in-person meeting, and there will also be a virtual component if you're not able to be there in person. So we will have a hybrid meeting this year. So we'll be both in person and virtual. We would love to have you join us in person if at all possible. Not a question related to the upgrade, but is there a specific date for the spring 22 harvest? Is it mid-July? Email said it was a temporary date. Is it possible the date would end up being sooner than July if the fall 2021 report was available sooner than later? So at this time, it is mid-July. I don't have an actual date yet. We are working with DCRI and IQVIA. Once I have a more specific date, once we get this timeline narrowed down, I'll provide more specific information, obviously. I don't foresee it being sooner. We are looking at mid-July at this time. So again, it would not be sooner than mid-July. But again, more specific time date is coming as soon as possible, as soon as we can get this timeline solidified with DCRI and IQVIA. So I apologize. I wish I could give you an exact date right now, but I don't have it at this time. We are working on it. Other than displaying the any new fields on the MVR, will there be any substantial changes to the operational reports due to the adult fields? Carol, I don't know if you wanted to take this one or if you're able, but
The question went away. Hold on.
oh, I'm sorry. No,
That's
it's
okay.
so it's just other than the MVR for the operational reports.
Oh, I don't think we've gotten quite there yet.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know first we need to start collecting the data before we start reporting on it. We haven't quite gotten that far, like Carol said, with the task force and with the surgeon leaders and how we want to report out this data. So coming soon, coming very soon. All right. Let's see. You're welcome, Heather. If our data is missing a primary diagnosis or primary procedure, would that show up in the MVR? Is that a critical error? Hold on, let me see.
Well, the missing variable report, it would show up there because that's the missing variable report should show every missing field, but there are other reports that will show up in because those are required for, to be included in some of the analysis tables, like the mortality analysis and things. And then, yeah, you're right. Like Leanne, it may be also give you errors if you don't have one.
Yeah, I can't remember if that's a critical error off the top of my head. I think it is. Hold, please. The errors and warnings reference list. I don't know why my computer is doing that. Okay. Hold, please. Sorry, Maggie. She's like, which tables would those be in? Are you?
For the primary diagnosis and procedure. So to be included in mortality analysis, you have to have a primary diagnosis and procedure designated. Like for table 16, I believe you would have to have, those can't be missing. And then primary procedure is also what designates your stat score. So then table 1 would have those to be required in as well. And then any of the tables that have you won't know it's a benchmark operation if you don't have primary procedure, and you have to have a certain specific primary diagnosis to get in and procedure to get into the lesion specific section. So
Right.
it could potentially affect a lot of tables depending on what the primary diagnosis or primary procedure would be.
And those aren't critical. Yeah, correct. So like Chassie said, it should show up in the missing variable report. If you're missing a primary diagnosis or primary procedure, yes, it should be reported in the MVR. Will there be an FAQ summary separate from the training manual?
So what will be in the FAQ summary, we're no longer, I think the big fundamental change for the training manual is we're no longer going to post every question that comes in. And so you will still get a formal response from STS following the core group review on the questions that you submit to us, but those aren't going to all be posted. What will get posted would be in the training manual would be anytime if we had to update something or clarify something, like perhaps we left out a detail that would be really important. And so that we would then update there, and then that would go into the FAQ summary document as well. So yes, there will be a separate summary document, but you're no longer going to see every question that was posted, just those that that would be useful to everybody.
You may want to show them an example of what we do in adult. I think that's.
Yes, if you go to the adult document, you'll see. And they're not posed as questions, like Melinda works to rephrase them on the adult side so that it's not specific to on January 1st, this happened to my patient, blah, blah, blah. It's more like what's the meat and potatoes of the question?
Sorry.
And what is the clarification that's needed?
Can you see my screen, Chastity?
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right.
So you can see there's a document that Melinda puts together, and the document just gets built on every month. So it's just one document, not 12 throughout the year, has the sequence number and then the short name. And the update is, if I remember right, the newest update is what is in red, whereas green was a previous update. And so you can see update in December of 2021, interleukin 17 inhibitors to include, they listed some meds, and then update in May of 22, they listed more meds to also include. And so these are very specific adult fields and don't necessarily apply to us, but in other words, perhaps a med was released that's in this category. It wasn't listed in their original definition a few years ago when it went live. So somebody asked, does this med now count? Can I answer yes? And so what has happened is that's for everybody, right? Any patient that's on this med, it would be, yeah, you would say yes now to this question, and we've updated the definition or clarified the definition. So here's another one, general concepts, valve disease and regurgitation. They updated in May, crossed out a previous update and said in September of 2020 for pre-op valve regurg and stenosis, parent fields, and they list the parent fields. Let's see, the answers are yes and no. And so you just kind of see it's for everybody. So you don't know the specifics of a scenario that came in that prompted somebody's question. But at least you get a flavor for what is being clarified, and you don't have to search the entire training manual to find that. Of course, the training manual updates will still be color coded and things, and you'll get training on that. But there will be that separate document then that you can look at each month when it gets updated and when the training manual is updated, that then you can see, oh, here were updates. So you can see in this training manual here for sequence 1180 that there was a clarification back in November. So the current months are red, previous are in November. But if you notice, it's not a question that's posted. It's just there's an update that this also includes this. So it's a clarification to a definition and not an FAQ with a question and an answer. You will still get that answer back to your question, even if you ask a very specific question, that will remain unchanged. But when we update a definition, it'll look more like this. So not a question, but unless the question is, just needs to be put in. So it'll be kind of at the discretion of the group as to how these go in. But you can see here was a question that it was such an important question that they did go ahead and include the question and then the answers as well with an update and the date. So I think it'll work a little better. And as well as then that summary document will list them all together. So you don't have to come and scroll through the whole training manual looking for red text or green text. You can use that summary document to guide you.
And the summary, I just want it very, very nice, Chastity. I'm sure Melinda is proud. If you scroll down in this FAQ document, you'll see that it has the previous months as well. So this is still May, I think.
Mhm.
Or we now we're in. Can you
Oh,
see?
here's March. Yeah, so it's a running document.
It's a running document, so you can search on the short name throughout. If you wanted to search on the short name to see all of the changes for a specific field, you could do that as well
Yes.
through the life of the version.
Melinda, do you have anything else you want to add since this is really your document?
No, the only thing I could add is there was a question. Yes, these are all put in the training manual, and I actually bookmark those updates every month in the training manual too, so that it's easy. They're easy to find, so you can easily you can see like all the updates for May. You just click on it and take you right there. I think it's a little more user friendly this way. The data managers appreciate having the running document. And the reason we developed this in the first place is there was a data manager out there who actually was creating a document herself and sending it out to several data managers, because in the past, a long time ago, you basically just had to go through the training manual and look for the red. You know, it was very difficult to do that and time consuming. So I asked Linda, I said, Linda, I like your document. I'd like to incorporate this and you won't have to do this anymore. So thanks to Linda, who originally started that document and sending it out to people. And I think it's been really helpful to the data managers so they can find things a lot quicker than they used to.
Excellent. Yeah, so the days of the congenital training manual with posting all the questions and just that's going away. We've got to have a more user-friendly document.
Yeah, I think too, it's hard to search because when people submit questions, they use, you know, abbreviations and acronyms and things, and totally get it. I do the same thing, but then to go back and try to search for something is very difficult. And so this should make that better.
Excellent. Dr. Go ahead.
I got one question for Chastity. Chastity, do you want to talk about how the FAQs are going to work for things like the preoperative factors? And, you know, when we have long lists of harvest codes, how that's going to change slightly?
Yes. So what it looks like now is all of those definitions have been removed. We're listing, if you're familiar with the training manual right now, there's a harvest code and a definition next to it. So yes, if you want to bring that up, that would be great. And so it's going to change a bit where the harvest codes are just listed, because what happens in the, like, go to pre-op factors or complications. Okay. Those are the best examples. So when we look at this pre-op factors, you see all the factors are here and listed with their definitions next to it. You have to go all the way to the end of the preoperative factors section to see all the FAQs. And those FAQs could be about any one of those pre-op factors up above. So if you're looking at pre-op factor mechanical ventilation, for respiratory failure, you have to go through all of these at the bottom. You can't just go up to respiratory failure and see what has been asked and what has been answered. So step one is going to be, we're taking out all of the questions, right? And building better, you know, incorporating that into the definitions. But part two will be just the harvest codes are going to be listed, you know, with the code and the field name. And then below that, we'll include all the definitions separately. And then that way, each field can have its own intent and clarification. And so it doesn't all have to be lumped together in one section. And so I think that rather than having all of your intent clarification about, each of those kind of like this is where it's all lumped together, regardless of which one you're asking about, now you can go right to mechanical ventilation for respiratory failure and see any intent or clarification regarding that.
Awesome. Thank you, Chastity. You absolutely amazing. So Dr. Subramaniam was able to join our call today. He just now able to hop on, and I know we had talked about Appendix C being covered in the monthly webinar. We will again, touch on Appendix C in the monthly webinar to reiterate what Dr. Subramaniam is going to share now. So actually, I would like to turn the floor over to him because I know he really wanted to hop on and talk to you all and provide some clarification based on the conversation last week. So, Dr. Subramaniam.
Thank you, Leanne. Chastity, thank you again. Thanks to all the data managers. I know there were some questions that were asked about Appendix C, and it led to conversations and directions that I don't think was clear at our last call. So I just wanted to take this opportunity real quickly to go through this Appendix C with you for a couple of minutes to clarify exactly what we're going to do. And Leanne and Carol have been incredibly kind in revising the coloring scheme for Appendix C to hopefully make it a little bit easier for all of us to understand this. I'm going to go through this with a set of 3 separate examples just to make sure I communicate where this new analysis is going to go and how it is going to go. So the STAT 2019 scores were derived based on procedures that were in the DCF that's currently being used. Based on that, the Appendix C is divided into 3 sets of categories of procedures based on those 3 colors that you see there. On the top is the orange color. The orange color procedures already exist in the congenital heart surgery database. We now revised them to have empirically derived new stat mortality scores and potentially the same or different stat mortality categories. In other words, you would code them the same way you've coded them all along, and they will be analyzed when the spring harvest is closed. They will be analyzed with the STAT 2019 scores for them. The example is the first line, subvalvular aortic stenosis repair. You would give it the harvest code 780. Nothing changes on your side. The analytics will give it a stat mortality score of 0.1 in the spring analysis, unlike the stat mortality score of 0.2 that it got until this point. So this is the easiest set of scores to understand, right? They're orange, they're already there, only the stat mortality score changes. I'm going to skip the blue and I'm going to go to green next. So green is a harvest code that is a new procedure added in the new DCF, which is the version 6.23 that Chastity is discussing right now. So Leanne has that example 3650, division with or without reimplantation of aberrant subclavian artery. You will not be able to pick this 3650 code until the new DCF goes into vogue. So you don't have to worry about it for the spring harvest analysis, because this code doesn't even exist. Now, when the code becomes available to you with the new DCF, we have already provided this procedure a consensus stat score of 0.1. That's a consensus score where the task force sat down, evaluated it, compared it to the nearest procedure, and came up with a what we call expert-driven consensus score. That's not empiric because the code doesn't even exist. You don't have to worry about it for the spring harvest. It will go into vogue when the new data version comes up, which is 6.23 whenever. The new data collection form comes up. The last that I'm going to go to is the harvest code highlighted in blue. And that's the one I think we left with lack of clarity in the last call. So I want to clarify that. So the blue codes are unique. So the blue codes there's one blue code that she came up with, is 5001. These are all the 5,000 codes. So the 5,000, the blue codes are all procedures that have more than one component in them. They are a composite procedure, such as in 5001, it's a composite of VSD patch repair, which is code 110, and primary closure of ASD, which is code 20. So right now, with the current data collection form that you're using, you will only be able to code 110 and 20 as independent component procedures. For the spring harvest and moving forward, the expectation is that the programming in the back end, when we do the analysis, we will combine this together as one composite procedure with a stat score of 0.2. Precedence exists for this. I'll give you one example. Truncus repair, intra-aortic arch repair. If the data manager today codes truncus as one procedure and intra-aortic arch as a separate procedure, at the back end, analytics combines them into a composite score and provides them a composite score stat score. That's what we will do for this VSD patch repair plus ASD primary closure in the spring harvest and further until the new DCF comes into vogue. When the new DCF comes into vogue, the data managers have the opportunity to directly code 5001 instead of individually coding 110 and 20. Nothing changes. If you code 110 and 20 separately, the program will still analyze it together as a composite procedure and give it a stat score of 0.2. And currently, that's all you can do. Once the DCF comes, you can code 5001 as well. In other words, the blue codes are the ones that caused a little bit of confusion in that you cannot code them as a composite procedure right now, but until you can, the program will still implement a composite stat score for VSD patch repair and ASD primary closure as well. There are a few blue procedures highlighted in blue in Appendix C. They're all composite procedures. They were new composite procedures we introduced based on the 2019 stat metric. There is another one, 5004. There are many like that. Again, we will implement the new stat scores for them based on stat 2019 scoring. It's just that today you will independently code them as component procedures. In the new DCF, you'll be able to code them as a single composite procedure. I know there was a long-winded way to explain it, but we thought separating them into 3 colors and putting them like this in Appendix C would make most sense to you all. So hope that was clear. I'm happy to take questions now or by email. Happy to answer them. And I will also circulate this in the task force and to the surgeons so they're also aware of how we're going to approach this moving forward. Thank you, Leanne. Back to you.
Thank you. So Amy, so is this new Appendix C published on the website? No, not yet. I am sending this over. I wanted to, before I published it, send it out there. I wanted Dr. Subramanian to have the chance to go over it, to review it with you all, to explain it. So right after this call, we'll be sending it to marketing and they will have it posted on the STS website, as well as I'll be sending it to IQVIA to have them have it posted within the library. So just give me, just hopefully by the end of the day today, it'll be updated and available on the STS website, as well as the IQVIA library. So just give me by the end of the day, and I will make sure on the STS website, as well as IQVIA, it is noted that the document is updated as of May 5, 2022. So just look for that, that clarification there. From Krista, I'm not sure how harvest analyses are named. Does spring 22 analysis mean the data that was submitted in spring 22 or the analysis that is released in spring 22? In other words, is the report coming out soon to be the spring 22 or the fall 2021 analysis? So Krista, the report that is coming out that is to be posted within the coming weeks is from the fall 2021 analysis. So it's from the fall 2021 harvest. So just keep in mind the fall we have the 4-year reporting periods. The spring reporting period for 2022 will go up through 12/30/2021. So spring harvest, and the spring harvest analysis report will include data from January 1, 2018 through December 31, 2021. The fall 2021 harvest analysis report that's getting ready to be released will include data from 7/1/2017 through 6/30/2021. I hope that's not confusing, but if you look out on the website, the harvest information includes what procedures are included in each harvest period. So if you have other questions or if you'd like to talk it through, Krista, just please feel free to shoot me an email, and I'm happy to talk that through with you offline if needed. Thank you. Okay, get that stuff. I just questioned that. Will IQVIA be providing any reporting that will allow sites to see how their data will be analyzed in the blue combo codes? I don't think at this time, so you should just be coding these as we currently have, with the combo codes as listed here. I can't really speak for IQVIA. They're not on the call. So I don't know, to be honest, I don't know how to answer that question right now. So I don't want to tell you anything that's not true. So let me follow up with IQVIA. At this time, I don't know if they're doing any reporting for the 5,000 combo codes. I don't believe they are. Will we be getting primary procedure mismatches if the analysis is done with a primary procedure harvest code that we are not able to utilize during a data submission for our 2022 submissions? So if you're not able to code those 6 point, you won't get a mismatch for any of the 623 variables.
Now let's bring these questions when IQVIA is on the line.
Yeah,
that's better, so we don't, because I think that these questions, the last two, I think were similar.
Yeah, so agree. So Maggie, can you save that? I have your question, so let's, I'm going to save this question. I'm going to jot these 2 questions down and have them for our educational webinar next week. So I think these would be good topics. And again, and I know Chastity plans to, we can review this document and answer any questions next week on the monthly educational webinar as well. So we'll do a recap of today's overview on next week's educational webinar. All right. So thank you. Those are great. Those are great questions. And again, I don't want to answer without IQVIA on the line, as I'm not 100% sure, and definitely don't want to tell you anything wrong. All right. All right. I don't see any additional questions. Again, like I stated, give me hopefully by the end of the day today to get this document updated on the STS website. I have to send it to marketing, so hopefully Kasha can get it updated by the end of the day. So again, please just be patient with me, and then IQVIA again will have this updated within their library as well. Thank you, Dr. Subramanian. I know you had hopped off. You were on another call and were able to join us at the last minute, so I greatly appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. I know we are a couple of minutes after. Is there any other information you all would like to cover or need to touch on before we leave? Dr. Meyer, Dr. Subramanian, Melinda, Chastity?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Oh, I'm good too.
Alrighty, and also I wanted to give a shout out to Janet Kreutzer. She was the one that suggested adding these the individual codes that make up the combo codes. So again, just a shout out to Janet for that suggestion to get that added into the appendix. I greatly appreciate that feedback. So all right, thanks everyone. Great call today. Look forward to our call next week. So again, thank you, Dr. Subramanian, Dr. Meyer. We appreciate it. Chastity, Melinda, Carol, you guys are awesome. Thanks everyone, and we will see you all next week on our monthly webinar. Thanks everyone. I hope you guys have a great day.
Thanks. Great job, Leanne. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.